A few years ago, when I was working a full-time W-2 job, I used to watch YouTube videos of people talking about making $100,000 income in a single month from their business or real estate and think, that's crazy money. Like, that's the annual salary that a lot of people aspire to, let alone monthly income. And as we've grown our short-term rental portfolio, I realized that the reality of a lot of these I make $100,000 a month videos or I have a 7-figure business is that it only tells part of the story, and that two different $100,000 a month businesses might be totally different once you factor in the expenses and look at the bottom line. And also some of them might be $100,000 one month and down to $15,000 the next month. So in this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain and get completely naked for you. Financially speaking, of course, this is a family video, and I'm going to show you what our six-figure month looked like this past month, and what that equates to in actual net income per property, as well as how that compares to the slower months and some lessons that we've learned over time. We started investing in short-term rentals 6 years ago by turning our basement into a separate one-bedroom apartment. And we did everything on that unit, from furnishing it to cleanings between guests to bookings and resolving guest issues and complaints. Since then, we've grown to own 21 short-term rental listings with a much more automated system with the help of a few key team members who handle most of the day-to-day. And this brought in a total of $150,575.42 this past month of July. I think the numbers tell the story of a business, and there's a few key learnings that came from analyzing these numbers that I think are really going to help you if you're looking to create similar type of income. And the good news is you can do it much quicker and with fewer properties, because we figured out these lessons as we went, but you can dive right in based off the lessons that we've already learned. So first off, I want to share a breakdown of what the numbers look like, but I think it's really important to keep in mind the type of properties that we rent out. These are very utilitarian types of properties. So not all short-term rentals are created equally. We are about an hour outside of Chicago in Northwest Indiana. So all of these are in Indiana, which is a very affordable state, in a very affordable area. And they work as vacation type rentals. You know, there's some local draws like Lake Michigan, there's a casino, there's shopping, there's wineries in the area, but nobody's flying across the country from California to vacation in Northwest Indiana. So they're very affordable properties that work as vacation rentals, but they also serve the purpose for utilitarian type rentals. So family visits, travel for work, nurses, all these reasons that are more utilitarian reasons that somebody would book a hotel, they would book our properties as well. So first off, here's a breakdown of our 21 short-term rental listings. And I mentioned we have 21 short-term rental listings, and that actually equates to 10 separate properties. So several of our properties are actually multi-unit properties. So they might be a duplex or a triplex, where we've got two different structures that we rent out on the same property. And out of that, we get a listing for each unit, but then we also get an additional listing for the combined units together. So we call it a super listing. So obviously you can't rent out those individual and the super listing at the same time, but it just gives you so much more diversity in terms of the type of travelers and the groups that you can host, because you can host large groups with the super listing and then smaller groups with the individual smaller units. And so what you'll see at the top are the first 5 are our single family homes. So each color is a separate property. So the first 5 you can see are different single family homes that we own. And then when you get into the next 5, these color-coded ones, this purple one, this big brick bungalow, this is actually a duplex, so we've got the super listing and then the individual units. Same with this green color, the yellow color, gray, and then the last one, this red one, is actually a triplex. So we've got each individual unit, and then we've got all 3 in 1 listed together. The Sunshine House, 3 units in 1, is the super listing. So you can see what each guest paid per listing, and then I've actually got a total for that property then, for the whole duplex in this case, or for the whole triplex down here. So you can see that our lowest performing properties were right around $9,500. And both of those are 3-bedroom, 1-bath properties. your typical run-of-the-mill type single-family houses. They're decorated really nice. They're in great shape, but they can only host up to 8 people with the pull-out couch that we have. On the other end of that scale, you can see that we made $25,000 on this single-family property. We made $23,000 on this triplex. And so these are 2 very different types of properties. So this one is a large property. It's actually a split level property. It's only 2,200 square feet, but we were able to get 5 bedrooms and 2 living spaces out of it. And it's about 4 blocks from the beach. So we didn't pay the premium of being right on the beach. It's a very affordable property, but yet it's still close enough to where we get a higher nightly rate because it hosts large groups that in the summertime are really interested in visiting the beach. The Sunshine House, this triplex, is actually right in the downtown area, and it's close to everything. And because we have 3 different units on this property, it really amplifies the overall revenue on this property. So across 10 properties, 21 listings, you can see that we brought in $150,575.42. Now let's look at the expenses. Okay, so in the first column here, you can see that I've still got the total income per property up, and then you can see how the expenses flow through. So I'm gonna go through each line item of expenses. So it sounds like amazing, you're making $150,000, you're like set for life. Well, before we even see any of that $150,000, $33,836 are taken off the top. That's before we even get to touch a dime of it. So most people don't even factor that in, but it is technically our income. It's just the government takes it out, or Airbnb takes it out, or VRBO, or Stripe. So I included all the taxes and platform fees into that because that's the stuff, the revenue that we don't even see. So almost 23%, 22, 23% comes out before we even get any revenue at all. The next big expense that we experience is the cleaning fees. We pay cleaners really well to go clean the properties. And so this is how the different cleanings translated. And some are lower than others. Some we had longer stays than others. Some properties we pay $200 to clean it. Some we pay $90 to clean it, depending on the size of the property. For utilities, it works out to be about $200 for the single family houses. For the multifamilies is about $300, and then I added in another $60 is what we pay for Wi-Fi. So the total for utilities was just over $3,000. I didn't add it up exactly per property because I just didn't want to take the time, but this is how generally it equates. The PITI, this is your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So this is our mortgage payment. So each property, we have either conventional mortgage or a DSCR loan on that property. And I've done other videos on what DSCR loans are. You can look them up. It's an investment loan that generally covers about 75% of the appraised value for that property. And so you can see some of these we bought pretty inexpensively because that's 75% of the value. That's principal, interest, and taxes and insurance all included into that value. So some of these were valued at like $100,000, and our loan is only $75,000. And some of them we purchased a couple years ago where the loan's in the 4% range for an investment loan. So you can see our PITI payments are relatively low compared to the amount of income that these properties bring in. So we're at about $12,000 in PITI. The second loan column is for private money that we borrowed. So like I mentioned, this PITI column, that's the initial loan, and that typically covers 75% of what you need to purchase a property. So to cover the other 25%, we'll approach private lenders, and there's a lot of private lenders who want to be a part of these high cash flowing deals. They want to make 10% on their money, so they'll lend us the money to cover the other 25% and some furnishing costs sometimes, and the other money that we need to get these deals done so we can consistently keep doing these deals. And so you can see the payment at 10%, that's $480,000 borrowed, give or take, that we owe 10% per month on. So you can see how that factors in. Then we've got lawn care. Obviously, every week we've got to have the lawn looking really good and cut. Then we've got maintenance. So this month of July, we actually had a lot more maintenance than typical. You can see that there's some properties where we had over $1,000 that month because, maybe we replaced some furniture. This includes replacing furniture that's worn out, includes handyman stuff. It includes maybe we installed a new fire pit at one of our properties. So there's some properties where we did a whole bunch of stuff, and then there's others where we didn't do $1 worth of maintenance. And that's how it always goes. Like you're going to have some months where there's nothing, and then you'll have another big expense or just regular wear and tear stuff that you've got to take care of. So you can see per property what that looks like. About $7,600, which is 5% of our income, went toward that. Then consumables was $1,829, and I didn't divide it out per property because we typically buy that in bulk, but it works out to be about $100 per unit, or just under $100 per unit. Then our team. So we have a great team that handles most of the day-to-day coordination with guests. They work remote, and we pay them right around $4,500 for that, and that's a variable cost, so it's based on the amount of hours that they work. And then our overhead was right around $2,500. So this business is great because it's a very low overhead business. We're not paying for a brick and mortar location. There's not a lot of overhead costs. We got a computer, phone, paying for gas. Like that's about it. So very low overhead in this type of business. So how does this all work through? So if you come back over here, you can see the total income was $150,000. Our total expenses, and you can see percentage of income, how those expenses work out across the bottom column here. But the total expenses equate to $76,000, and the net profit for this month of July is $74,329. So you can see that in the month of July, which is our busiest month, that's our peak month when we make the most money, we're at about a 50% expense ratio, and we bring in around $75,000 of net income. In our slowest month, which is January, we bring in probably about a third of that. So it's right around a third of that. And the good thing about this type of business is that there's a lot of variable expenses. So if we brought in a third of $150,000 and our expenses were still $76,000, we'd be in trouble that month. But our cleaning costs go way down because we have a lot less cleanings, because our occupancy is closer to 50% than it is 100% in the summertime. So our cleaning costs go down, our utility costs go down, our team costs go down. The lawn care, obviously in the wintertime is less. Maintenance goes down because there's less people staying there. So we essentially break even in the slowest month of the year, and then we make about $75,000 in the most lucrative month of the year. And then it tapers somewhere in between there, the other months. So July is the busiest, then August and June might be slightly lower than this. Then you get into the collar seasons and it's slightly lower, and then it tapers off to where it gets closer to January as you're into February, and December's a little bit busier, but November is a slower month as well. So you can start to see how this all fleshes out when you have 21 vacation rental listings. So a couple lessons learned that I just want to point out real quick. If I were to start this whole business over again and start building my portfolio over again, what would I do different? Let me switch back over and show you this again. So what I would do different is I would primarily focus on multifamily properties. You can see that this triplex that we have just over $300,000 into brought in $23,000. And that's not as much as a single family home. So the question probably comes up, like, why wouldn't you buy more like the big blue property here, that single family home? The difference is in the off season. So this single family home kills it in the summertime because it's closer to the beach and it's a larger home, hosts large groups. But in the wintertime, large groups don't typically travel to Indiana. It's a lot of small groups. And so we have to drop that price way down to, a fraction of what it is in the summertime to just get bookings with small groups that don't mind staying in a big place, but they're going to pay on par with all the other smaller units around because they don't mind staying in a smaller unit because it's a small group. However, with this type of property, we can still rent it to these large groups. That's how we made $7,800 renting to larger groups that booked the entire place in the summertime. But then in the wintertime, we get 3 streams of income from those smaller units. So the price point actually is close to that Big Blue property per unit because it's a lot of small groups traveling, but we have 3 streams of income coming in. So the income is actually much higher in the slow season. As a final point, my whole goal for getting into short-term rentals in the first place is freedom. I want to have autonomy. I want to be able to impact others. I don't want to have to drive to a 9 to 5 every day. So what's most important to me is the net cash flow that's left over, because that's what supports us. That's what pays the bills. So efficiency over size is so much more important. And if your goal is financial freedom as well, I think you should consider that as well. A lot of people just shoot for growth and they think the more units they have, the better. As I look at my portfolio and am monitoring how it's performing, I realize I could actually eliminate probably the bottom 25% performers, and it actually wouldn't impact my net income that much because those aren't the most efficient. The expenses compared to the income are actually not super efficient. So if you're in the process of building a short-term rental portfolio, I think it's really smart to keep that in mind. The most efficient properties you possibly can. How little can I invest in to a property for the highest net income, the most that's left over after you can take all the expenses into consideration, which most people don't do. If this video was helpful for you, then I'd be grateful if you'd share it with a friend who you think might also find some value in it. And you could also hit the like button, and you can subscribe because I'm going to be doing some live upcoming case studies, so you'll be notified when I go live or when future videos come out, because they come out on this channel on a weekly basis. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.